ever looked around at your life and thought, what the f? Like, truly, this is not the life I signed up for. Because that was me 5 years ago. I was 30 years old, working at a corporate job 40 plus hours a week that I hated, commuting for hours to and fro, and then coming home to a messy house in survival mode, taking care of my 3 kids under 3. Because the cherry on top is I was married to my high school sweetheart who was not very sweet. And he was always out of town, which is my cute way of saying he was not very helpful, among other things. Fast forward to now, I am 35 and my life is almost unrecognizable in the best way. When I think about myself in my 20s sometimes, it makes me sad. Sad that I missed out on so many years of happiness because I was scared of change. And that's why I'm making this video, because had I known 15 years ago the things I know now, it would have saved me so much time. So if you're watching this and you're feeling stuck or unhappy, this is your sign that it's time to make a change. Because most people won't make a change until the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. For me, this happened when I found out some Jerry Springer stuff about my marriage, and I realized that the pain and fear of leaving was less than the pain and fear of waking up in 10, 20, 30 years from now and being in this same situation of being mistreated, begging for the bare minimum, and my life has just passed me by. The pain of change is temporary, but the pain of potential years of regret, we don't want that. So if we want to change, we need to develop some self-awareness. And this isn't supposed to sound harsh, but you do need to understand how you ended up in this rut in the first place, because you can't have self-development without self-awareness, and you cannot change what you are not aware of. If you truly want to start over and not just keep repeating the same mistakes on a loop, you've got to take a hard look at your history and ask yourself, what choices did I make? What patterns am I repeating? What red flags did I ignore? This isn't about beating yourself up. Let me make that clear. You can't change the past, but you can learn from it. Journal about it, go to therapy, reflect, but do it with the intention of growth, not guilt. Number 3, you are not responsible for everything that has happened to you, but you are responsible for how you respond to it. Taking personal responsibility is how you take your power back. And once you do, you won't be stuck repeating the same story. You're free to start writing a new one. Despite what the Disney movies taught us girlies in the 90s, no one is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. Next, figure out what you want. This part is not easy, but you can't hit a target that you can't see. Starting over isn't just about leaving behind the life that you don't want. It's about building the life that you do want. But to do that, you have to ask yourself and truly understand, what do you want? Start small, grab a notebook, and start writing down, what does your dream life look like? You could even make a vision board like I did with my friends at my divorce party. I don't personally believe in the magical manifesting powers. I definitely don't have stacks on stacks of cash like you saw in my vision board. Some of what you see here was just for funsies, but doing these types of activities, it does help you focus in on what your priorities are. It gives you a target, and once you have that target, you have something to aim for. You don't have to figure it all out in that single day, and your vision of what you want for your life will evolve over time. That's normal and to be expected. The important part is truly just defining what you want and just starting somewhere, which leads me to my next point. If you don't decide what you want, someone else will decide for you. Life doesn't just happen to you. It happens through the choices that you or others are making for you. If you don't consciously decide what you want, you may be living according to what other people want, and you never really realized it until now. That's where I was 5 years ago. I was just doing what I guess I thought everyone else wanted me to do, and that didn't lead me to my happiest life. If you don't consciously decide what you want, then you may be living according to someone else's plans, expectations, priorities, whether that's your boss, your parents, your partner, or even just society's idea of what you should be doing. Get clear on your priorities and productivity will become easier. So I cannot stress this enough. Focus on what you want. And then once you do, that brings me to my next point, stop filling your calendar with things that are not a priority. You can't make room for change if your time is consumed by things that don't serve you. A lot of us spend our time saying yes to things out of obligation, fear of disappointing others, just general people pleasing. But if you can't say no, then your yeses mean nothing. Set boundaries and say no to what drains you and yes to the things that align with your values and goals. Now that doesn't mean just cut off your entire friend or family group unless they are actually all toxic. My hope is that they're not. Obviously, life requires balance and you have to determine what that balance is for you. But coming from a former people pleaser, constantly prioritizing others at your own expense is not sustainable. Next, have a bias to action. This one's gonna get me choked up. We all know life is short. The average human life is 72 years, meaning a lot of us have less than that. When I lost my dad 5 years ago, he was 63 years old and he was only 1 week from his retirement. Now, with the time he had, he lived a full life. He spent a lot of time with his family. He did great in his career. He traveled a lot. The point I'm trying to make here is don't wait for some arbitrary date in the future to start living your life. Whether that is when you retire, you're gonna do this. When your kids are grown, you're gonna do this. When your kids are just old enough to do X, Y, and Z, you'll start. You'll get to it after you get that elusive promotion that you keep getting passed up for in corporate America. Oh, I hated corporate America. Whatever that arbitrary date is, you're not guaranteed to make it to that. So live your life now. And if it's not the life you want, problem solve and figure out how to live it. If I've said it once, I've said it 5 million times, but it really is so true. No one is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. All right, next. Next, do not fear failure. If you are not taking action because of your fear of failure or embarrassment, you are holding yourself back, and I promise you, nobody cares as much as you do. As stated before, we are all going to die one day, so why let the fear of looking silly stop you? Embarrassment is temporary and won't matter in the long run. And the people who judge you the harshest are usually the ones who are too scared to step out of their comfort zones themselves. So that is a them problem, not a you problem. Next, and this one's big because nothing happens overnight, so don't expect it to. But you need to have patience with the journey ahead and with yourself. There will always inevitably be setbacks and failures, but how you respond to those failures will be the difference between giving up too early or bouncing back stronger than ever with the wisdom you've gained from that experience. Every setback is the opportunity for a comeback. Next, and this one I really do feel like is underestimated because there is the whole saying of you have to save yourself, which is true. You ultimately have to do a vast majority of the actions, and part of the actions is surrounding yourself with the right people, because the truth is the people you surround yourself with can push you forward or pull you down. You cannot build your dream life if you are surrounded by people who are tearing you down, criticizing you. Emotional saboteurs is the way I think of them. Taking accountability for your life means making sure that you are prioritizing time with the people who inspire you, who support you. You need to intentionally spend more time with those positive people in your life and spend less time with the people that are criticizing you, demotivating you, and just generally not being nice to you. And this one can be really hard because for most of my life, and I take accountability for my actions. I chose to marry who I chose to marry, but my biggest hater was my ex-husband. And I truly believe that the biggest life hack is choosing to marry someone who is just nice and supportive. Like, it sounds so f***ing obvious, but like it really is true. I chose to be married to someone who was constantly criticizing me, calling me lazy. I was never pretty enough. I needed to lose weight. I wasn't working hard enough. My food wasn't good enough. Like literally every freaking thing I could not be good at, to him I wasn't good at. I was good for nothing. And I started to believe it. A big reason I'm making this video is because videos like this helped me realize that that was not normal. And once I cut out my biggest hater, which I had to do, it wasn't easy. And there are other life ramifications because of it. Like I do have to co-parent with him still. But I truly do think when it comes to self-improvement, your social circle and the impact that has on your life is underestimated. And maybe it's not. Maybe I just previously underestimated it. And that is why it is one of the things I wish I knew in my 20s that I now know at 35. It is scary starting over. And that is what brings me to my last point, which is happiness is often on the other side of fear. I had this written in my journal very early on in my self-improvement journey, and it really is true. So if you are terrified, maybe that's a good thing.